So here's what we're doing. A personal leadership assessment. And I want to ask you some questions about your leadership, okay? Because healthy youth leaders build healthy youth ministries, okay? So here's the first question I want to ask you. And we're gonna take these apart, and they'll be blogged on youthology.com early this week also. Question number one, are you praying in the Spirit? Are you praying in the Spirit? And what I really mean by that is simple. This is not just a Pentecostal question, okay? This is not just a Pentecostal question, all right? I want this to be more for all of us. And so, are you praying, right, in the Spirit? I want you to think about that. That's a critical question, because God gives us the praying in the Spirit as a gift. It's a great gift. And oftentimes, we don't take advantage of that. Listen, I know that sometimes we don't know what to pray, right? We don't know what to pray. And if we would just look at this gift, it would fill in the blanks, right? We love fill in the blanks because at least it gives us an opportunity to study something and know, I know what I could put in there. I got a couple of choices. Paul said that when we don't know how to pray, that we should pray with groanings too deep for words. Now, let me say something about that. I know that whether you're in the Pentecostal persuasion or not, this gift is critical and important. It is given to us by God so that in the moments when we're not sure what to do, we can pray in the Spirit. Let me say it this way. All of us have no problem groaning for communication, okay? I mean, think about that. Someone cuts us off in the car, right? And we're like, and that's the way we express ourselves. Or maybe we get, something in the mail, and we look at bad news in the mail, and we're like, man, I don't know about that. Right? There's that, Or you're at a ball game, someone scores, right? And you look at the person next to you, and you're like, and we don't even say words, right? Sometimes. And it's just that, Oftentimes, it is that expressive language that can help us when we don't know what to do. And in youth ministry, that's often. So I want to challenge you that you would practice your praying in the Spirit. I pray in the Spirit every morning, and I pray in the Spirit every evening. And throughout the day, I spend minutes in prayer by praying in the Spirit, because it helps me when I'm not sure what to do. And to be honest, it's a spiritual miracle, okay? It's a spiritual miracle. Let me go to the second question. And that leads us to this leadership question on how are my spiritual disciplines? So we talked about praying in the Spirit, right? But what about my spiritual disciplines? So what about spiritual, see if I can spell here, disciplines? Right? What are spiritual disciplines? Let me give you a few, okay? I wrote these down a couple of days ago as I was preparing for this, and this is critical. Here it is. Are we spending time in personal prayer? Not just corporate prayer when people are around. Are we spending time in the Word? Listen, some of us, we haven't read the Word since church last week or Wednesday night with the youth there, right? Are we spending time in the Word? How about fasting on a regular basis? Right? Fasting on a regular basis. The removal of food, things from our life for a spiritual purpose, right? Am I fasting on a regular basis? Here's another spiritual discipline we don't think about very often, and that is spending time in silence. Oh my, that's difficult, isn't it? I mean, sometimes it's like, I don't know about that, man. Silence. Sometimes just the discipline of silence can be healing to you or give you ideas, right? Move you out of a rut that you're in. So I want you to practice silence on a regular basis. Sometimes praying is just being silent. Doesn't that take the pressure off? It takes the pressure off from us if we're silent because we're really still communicating to God in that moment. Here's another one. How about the spiritual discipline of giving? Giving. Just giving. Giving to people instead of always taking. It's so easy in America to like, right, give me, my name is Jimmy, and all we want to do is take. Learn the spiritual discipline of giving. Here's one. How about evangelism and sharing my faith? Because I truly believe that one of the missing disciplines in our life is, and maybe it goes back to that first area of praying in the Spirit and the baptism of the Spirit and God giving us power, but we don't share our story very often. And so how about evangelism? How about the discipline of evangelism and outreach and sharing your story and your faith with somebody, right? All of these. Because healthy leaders build healthy youth ministries, okay? So are you praying in the Spirit? Question number one. Question number two, how are your spiritual disciplines? What are they? What do they look like? Are they healthy? Let me give you another one, and that is this idea of developing your leaders, okay? Developing your leaders. So let me go over here and ask you about leadership development. Okay, leadership development. What does that look like? How well are you doing leadership development? Now, we've talked about that often. You can go back in some of the other video shorts that we do, and you'll see this idea of leadership development. Here it is. Ask your leaders how well you're doing leadership development, right? Don't ask yourself, because oftentimes we'll be like, oh yeah, man, I teach them, we're doing some great stuff with them. Ask your leaders how well prepared they feel about this. Listen, the answer to many of your youth ministry problems is leadership development. It is development and delegation. Because oftentimes this week, I'm hearing from a youth leader, as I was doing some youth ministry coaching this week, the last 4 days, I'm hearing from a youth leader say things like, man, I don't have enough time, and there's just too many things to do. And when you come in here and show me all the stuff I gotta do, I'm like, how am I gonna do that, right? The answer to most of your problems in youth ministry is development of your leaders, and then the delegation of those leaders and letting them begin to work in the core competencies that God has given them, right? So I want you to think that through too. Okay, so 2 parts of leadership development, okay? I want you to ask yourself these 2 questions. How well am I recruiting, and how well am I retaining? Because sometimes we just think about the recruiting of our leaders, we get them all on the team, right? And then we just keep working and we get at it. But hear me, retention of leaders is just as important of the recruitment of leaders, because we can recruit leaders all day, but if we're not developing them and training them, we're not going to keep them. And so retention is critical to leadership development, right? And here's the last question. I want to ask you this last question. So the first one was, are you praying in the Spirit as a leader, right? What are your spiritual disciplines? How healthy are your spiritual disciplines? And then we listed those. And then, are you developing your leaders through recruitment and retention, right? And then finally, how are you balancing, okay? How are you balancing family and ministry? So this is the tough one, right? The balance, and that's almost like a bad word, isn't it? The balance of fam and ministry. Dude, I don't know about you, but even that word right there, just that word, balance, is like evil, right? Let me do something. I want to take out the word balance, okay? I want to take out the word balance from that question, and I want to ask it differently. Because it's very difficult to use the term balance when we talk about ministry. Ministry is a vocation that doesn't stop at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, right? You work 8 to 4, 9 to 5, right? That's what most people work. Oftentimes our problems go beyond that. So let me take the word balance out of it and say it this way, okay? Maybe what we need to see is holistic ministry. So I want to ask the question this way. How are we doing holistic family ministry. Holistic. In other words, I'm not going to compartmentalize, okay? I am not going to compartmentalize my family in the ministry. We involved our kids. We involved our entire family in ministry. I raised my kids understanding this simple thing. We are called as a family, right? We are called as a family. I have greater expectations of you than the church will ever have of you. And I personally wanted to put the family pressure on my kids that we are ministers, right? So that it wouldn't be a shock to them if somebody said something at the church, right? Well, you're a PK, so you should. And then the second thing that I did with our children is this. And I know this is not popular. I understand this. I talk about this often in leadership sessions. But I told each one of my kids, we are called as a family, and so are you. And if God uncalls you, did you catch that? If God uncalls you, we're so okay with it. You just tell us. But I put this relationship calling of my kids on them hearing the voice of God, and every one of my kids felt that same calling, right? That we had as a family because we shared family ministry. Ministry was holistic to us. Ministry wasn't just about, okay, hear me, balancing how much time with the family, how much time in ministry, okay? And I know that's not popular. It worked for us. You do it your way. But I'm telling you, critical to youth ministry, I want you to hear this, critical to youth ministry is that we show our students a holistic family ministry. The family is falling around these students. The family model is it's disintegrated and it's almost non-existent. We're not just raising a fatherless generation, we are raising a fatherless, a motherless, and a siblingless generation, right? The family structure's been disintegrated. So the best way to model to students today a holistic ministry is for us to involve our family and for them to see the health of our family in ministry, okay? So there's the 4 things on your leadership assessment. Ask yourself these questions as a youth leader. Am I praying in the Spirit? So that when I don't know what to do, I've turned to praying in the Spirit. How are my spiritual disciplines? And you'll see those. I'm going to break those down. We just did now, but I'll break those down on the blog, okay? And you'll see them on the blog by Tuesday. And then the third question, are you developing your leaders? Recruitment of leaders and the retention of leaders. How well am I doing leadership development? And the key to that is ask your leaders. Don't just ask yourself, ask your leaders, right? So, and then finally, the last question was simply, how are we doing holistic family ministry? Not necessarily that danger question of balancing family and ministry, right? I want you to see it inclusive in holistic youth ministry, okay? So anyway, thank you for joining us. We'll have all this stuff up online soon, and you'll be able to check all this out and read through these important things. And then I just want to encourage you to join our YouTube page at youtube.com/Jeff Grinnell, and then be looking for our podcast. We're going to be going up on iTunes as soon as I take all of these videos down from the last 7 months or so. Again, this is episode 18, a leadership assessment test, leadership assessment questions, right? And thank you for joining us. You have a great week. I'm going to have a great week. God bless you. Check us out at youthology.com. All right?